Okay, so first of all, I think most of you guys know us. We're Maxable. We were started as a way to connect homeowners to the education and resources they need to build an ADU. So as a lot of you have probably discovered, building an ADU can be an unbelievably rewarding experience, but it can also be kind of challenging and difficult. So tonight, what we really want to focus on is how do you design an ADU for aging in place, and what are some of the difficulties and data that we can share with you about both getting ready for retirement and as populations kind of get older, especially with baby boomers. And so this is really going to be chock full of information related to that. So here we are. We'll jump into it. I want to introduce our panel, but before I do, I want to thank Loan Depot. Last time we had about 300 people register for our webinar, but we only had capacity in our webinar for 100 people. And so Loan Depot said, hey guys, it sounds like you need some help in this department. You can use our webinar platform so that everyone can join. So anyway, thank you to Loan Depot for letting us use. They have, I think, capacity, Meredith said, to go to 10,000 webinar participants. So we don't have that many people joining us tonight, but it is nice that they let us do this just so that, we can allow everyone to join. So first up tonight is going to be Fred Buzo. He's the Associate State Director for AARP, and I took a sneak peek at his slides, and they're chock full of really wonderful data and reports that I think you guys are going to enjoy looking at, and kind of how does that play into ADU specifically. And then next we'll hear from Carrie Shores. I've had the pleasure of working with Carrie a number of times now and presenting at some of the same ADU panels. Not only is she the co-founder of Inspired Independence, but she specializes in aging in place opportunities, specifically within ADUs. So she's a perfect person to talk to about if you're interested in, building or designing an ADU for an elderly parent or a family member, or you're thinking about an aging in place opportunity for yourself. She's going to share with us some of the projects she's completed, and we've got lots of photos. So I know that you guys will be interested in that. And then I'm Caitlin. I founded Maxable Space. I'll be the moderator for tonight and kind of just lead us through everything. So before we kick off with our experts, I just wanted to share some common scenarios that we run into. So we work with hundreds of homeowners across the state, and here are some really common things that we hear. One, there are adult children and they're looking to build an ADU in their backyard for their parents. Maybe they have a parent that is selling their house or their condo or something in another state and wants to move to California or move into the neighborhood in which their children live, and things are really expensive. And so they'll use the sale of that house or just personal assets they have to fund their ADU project. Kind of some of the benefits of that is you have this multi-generational living where you have grandparents that are able to help out with young children, or it kind of goes both ways. You have kids that are able to help out with their parents. And so this can be a really wonderful way to set something up. And we've worked with a lot of families who have done this. We also have parents who are building an ADU in their backyard for an adult child. That's also a common one. Building an ADU for downsizing or aging in place. Some of us, they have large houses. It's a lot to maintain, or we also hear a lot that, all the bedrooms are on the second floor and they're worried about, mobility issues, but they really love their house or they really love the neighborhood that they live in, especially with Prop 13 in place in California. Selling your home and buying a new one can be, maybe not always the best financial move. And so this allows you to stay in the neighborhood you love or continue to own the property that you have, while downsizing and moving into something more modest. And, some of these ADUs, depending on what neighborhood you live in, can be up to 1,200 square feet. So it's actually a lot of square footage that you can work with in some cases. And then we've also worked with people who are building an ADU for a caregiver to live on the property down the road. So maybe they're building it right now for a rental, and they're planning on renting it, for into the near, however long into the future. And then at some point they're thinking, yeah, you know, I want to stay in my main house. I don't want to move anywhere, but I will need some assistance down the road. And this would be the perfect opportunity to have a caregiver live close. So I think the important thing when you're looking at building an ADU is thinking about who you're optimizing it for. So if you're thinking about, you know, building it for elderly parents, looking at things like universal design and ADA compliance, which I'm not going to get too far into because Carrie's going to do a really deep dive with us into that, versus looking, you know, if you were looking to build this for your parents, you're going to be looking at different considerations than if you're looking at a rental. You know, rental, you want to optimize things like number of bedrooms and bathrooms, you know, privacy and access, things like that, durability of finishes, versus if you're building for your parents or you're building for yourself, you know, you're thinking about lifestyle choices, you're thinking long-term needs down the road. So it's important to kind of keep in mind what your goals are in this project. So there's a lot that we can get into on the design side. And before we do, now I want to turn it over to Fred, who's going to show us kind of some statistics and his look into what he's seeing. So. There we go.
Are you all able to see that?
Not yet. So you should be able to click the little square with the up arrow, and that should get you the presenter role. And then just a reminder, guys, while Fred is getting that set up, is that you can add in questions at any point in the webinar. So if you're curious about something and you want to get those questions answered, we'll try to get as many of those answered at the end.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not allowing me to share right now.
Okay, well, let me pull up your presentation.
Oh, I think I have it now, actually.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great.
So, hello, everyone. My name's Fred Buzo. I'm an Associate State Director for AARP, and I'm based in San Jose, California. As some of you probably know, AARP represents the interests of older adults all around the country and in California. Older adults we define as 50 and over. So I know some folks who are 50 don't believe they are older adults yet, but nevertheless, that's how we define an older adult for purposes of membership within AARP. And I mean, as Caitlin said, you know, one thing that's super important is really just this whole idea of aging. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, we are aging as a society. And so whether that's in California or around the country, we are aging at a rapid pace. And so the question is, you know, where are all of these older adults in the future, you know, going to live? And so some of what we have to do is to create enough housing, obviously, for this large number of older adults that is projected to, you know, to come about over the next few decades. And so ADUs is one solution to that, is one answer to housing all of these folks. And so as you can see here, you know, we have a tremendous age shift that is going on. And so every single state is experiencing it. So it isn't just California, although California is aging very rapidly as well. But there are some states that are even currently, as we speak, states like Montana, states like Maine, that are having tremendous issues, not only with housing older adults, but providing enough caregiving for older adults. And as Caitlin mentioned, you know, sometimes ADUs specifically are built for caregivers, but then there is an issue with whether or not, if you don't have any caregivers, then, you know, then perhaps the housing issue becomes secondary. Nevertheless, there are issues, related to both. And so, as we age as a society, the other thing that's really changed is just sort of what a family looks like these days. It's just very different than what it used to look like in the past. In the past, your sort of your nuclear family was your mom and dad, maybe 2 or 3 kids, and now most people either live with their parents, or they live by themselves, or they have some sort of other living arrangement. But most young people at this point don't have what we used to think of as sort of your average family living arrangement. And so a lot of kids are now moving back into their parents' home, as Caitlin alluded to earlier. And so what happens then is that you have older adults who think to themselves, well, I'm aging. What do I do? How do I take care of myself? How do I pay for perhaps not their home, because maybe they own that home outright, but the reality is a lot of older adults are on fixed income, so they have to pay for everything else, even if they own their home. And so many times when it comes to medical expenses, prescription drug expenses, they have to figure out how to pay for these things. And they have to figure out who's going to take care of them. So as Caitlin said earlier, many folks will build ADUs for the purposes of moving in a relative, children, friends, perhaps a caregiver, so that they can then take care of their older adult. And so or they will do it for extra income as well. I mean, we have folks who just simply want to build another ADU to make a little bit of extra money, which is fine as well, because the reality is then what they're doing is they're putting another unit at least into the marketplace.
I thought, Fred, one of the things that's been interesting that people have been talking to us about lately is wanting to downsize out of their main house and use their ADU as their, new primary living place, but with the intention of just being retired and traveling a lot more, and getting to actually, Carrie, I think you might have had a client that did something like that, where they really wanted to have this ADU and have the income of renting their house so that they could kind of see the world and not be tied down by a big mortgage.
Yeah, there's a couple of clients that we've been working with that have done that. They want to be able to leave their house, know when someone's in the main house, keeping an eye on things, and they don't have a big liability cost-wise and can travel the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a fun application.
And so, most older adults want to stay in their home. Most want to stay in their neighborhood. And so nationwide, we're looking at about 3/4 of older adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. In Santa Clara County, it's not so much that they want to stay in their homes, but it really is about they want to live independently as they age. And that could be in their home or at least in the community.
Oh, Fred, we're having a hard time hearing you all of a sudden.
Yeah, I hear you. So I don't know what that noise is.
Yeah, did anything change maybe? Maybe you could try muting yourself and unmuting yourself again.
Oh, can you hear me now?
That's much better.
Yes, yeah.
All right. I don't know what that was, but
Technology fun.
yeah, possibly. Yeah. So, here's some, and again, Caitlin mentioned, some of these things about why older adults would want to build an ADU. And so here you have, 84% who would want to, provide a place for a loved one, 83% provide a home for a family member or friends, for guests, so that there's a number of reasons why older adults want to build ADUs. And so ultimately, whether it's ADUs or any other sort of home, regardless of the scale, if it's an ADU, a single family home, a duplex, a triplex, whatever. It's about providing choices and options for older adults. And so, because the idea is that if you provide choices for older adults, then you provide choices for younger residents as well. And so the operative word in aging in place is aging. So what I don't want folks to walk away from this conversation with is the idea that ADUs are only for what they used to be for, right, back in the old days, which were grannies, because they were referred to as granny units. And there was a reason why they were referred to as granny units, because many times that's where granny lived. But it isn't just for granny anymore. And, they can be for younger residents. It can be for older residents. It can be for older residents who started out as younger residents and maybe, again, aged in place and moved, as Caitlin said earlier, moved from the main house perhaps to the ADU. And so it's a versatile type of product, which is awesome. And so, you have folks can, attach an ADU to an existing home, which means they can live under one roof with a family member or a friend, perhaps. It can be a completely detached, independent, but interconnected space. It can evolve and over time so that you can age literally in that one place, in that one location. And then here I have what's called the granny pod, but the granny pod really refers to something that might be built specifically for someone with medical needs in mind. So there are certain jurisdictions that allow medical ADUs and have different ordinances that apply to medical ADUs, which cater to folks with really, really specific needs. But home today, home tomorrow. So it isn't just a home for tomorrow or a home for today. It's a home for everybody. Hopefully, we can really, really get this idea of aging in place, and that these are things for people of all ages, and that becomes the norm in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred, for sharing all that with us. That's, very compelling data. And I have to say, having done this, there's a lot of different names that people call these, whether it's accessory dwelling unit or, granny flat or whatnot. But the word granny flat, I really don't think does this justice, I mean, if
Correct.
you guys are going to see Carrie's amazing ADUs that she's designed in a second, but, these are sleek, modern, kind of energy efficient, like sexy, cool units. I mean, there's really some kind of unbelievable things that people are doing in the way that they're designing them that can, I would happily move into one of them, you know what I mean? So, I don't think you have to think too like this kind of stuffy, sad little, thing in the backyard. Like people can, that's kind of the beauty of this, is you can to fit your exact needs.
Yeah, you don't have to have a lot of doilies all around. You know what I mean?
Right. You can get rid of the plaid sofa and all the doilies and do some fun stuff. So, okay, Carrie, we're excited to see your slides and hear from you. So let's turn it over to Carrie now.
All right, let's see how gracefully we can do this. Are you guys seeing the screen?
It looks like it's trying to load. Yep, now I see it.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to start with the general overview of kind of a neighborhood. I mean, one of the great things about these ADUs, especially for the boomer generation, is that they are worried about what they're leaving behind. And, this is just a smart, sustainable way for our cities to grow. We're missing that middle housing, and we're also in an area where a lot of people are, cash poor but house rich. And so we can take all these backyards and start to, fill them up with great housing options. So I just wanted to run quickly through there's basically 4 different ways to add an ADU. A detached ADU is freestanding in the backyard. This is often the least disruptive to the main house. If you're going to build one, you can get the access really simplified and clean. It's not always the most cost effective, but there are some good perks. When you keep the two separate, it keeps you from having to do any structural upgrades on your main house. So as an investment point of view, it can be good. Then there's the attached model, where this can be really great. Let's say you're in your house, you don't really want to leave, but you're only using part of your house. You're not using the whole thing. So you could do an addition, maybe claim a couple rooms in your house and then claim a little bit more space. This one usually needs to match architecturally in style. Then there's the garage conversion. So we're kind of taking this over. Now, I break a lot of people's hearts when I go out into the field and they say, oh, I have a great garage and I want to spend $40,000 to add a kitchen and a bathroom. But a lot of times these old garages are not designed to support today's current building codes. So just be mindful that if you walk in your garage and the floor is all cracked and you can see dirt underneath it, it might be a little more expensive than you thought. And then taking over attic or basement can be a good way. If you have 7 foot or 7'6" clear ceiling height, I've got to figure out how to stop my PowerPoint. That can be a great way to get a unit and be a more cost effective. But keep in mind, if you have to raise the house or excavate down to get the unit in, you're also with these units going to have most likely a staircase down or a staircase up. So this isn't necessarily going to be an accessible unit for everybody.
And Carrie, what would you say the most common form of these different forms? I think we see the most out of the hundreds of homeowners that we've worked with on these. I would say that the detached ADU and the garage conversion are the two most popular that we work with.
I think so too. I think, we've done several basement additions where, they because there's different concerns when you're building these. There's the building department cares about how the buildings are separated. So there's some extra construction costs to make it fire separated to meet the building department, whereas all the great legislative changes that we've had are really more about the planning department. So detached and garage conversions are usually, the more that what we're seeing than the other models. So we call ourselves Inspired Independence because when we got into this idea of multi-generational living, we started talking to all our family and friends about what their plans were for retirement. And they all kind of shut down. And I think it's probably because it was these kind of images that came to mind as their only options. And we really felt as architects that what happened is that all of these things went straight from the institution and the operating room into people's homes because no one stopped to be thoughtful about the design and to think about how we could do it in a more inspired way. And then our belief is that if that's true, that helps people be excited about what's possible design-wise. I just like this kind of perspective. So this is a famous picture of Whistler's mother that was painted in 1871. But so in this picture, she's 65. And then this is Diane Keaton today, or not today, she's older than that today, but this is her when she was 65. And what you see is that like how we're living and how everything's changing is so different, but our housing isn't. And so I think that's where we hope to fire you up today to think that you can take advantage of a lot of great design features to make a great space, either for you or a family or, the great things about the ADUs is that they're flexible. Mm-hmm. So Fred talked about this a little bit about how our families are changing. We all know that most people want to choose to stay in their home. And if you look at the single family homes, like in California, 56% of housing is single family. The truth is with that growing aging population, we don't have enough senior facilities. But the more important reality is that seniors don't want those facilities. They want something different. So this is just a context. Yeah, go ahead.
Not even touching too on how expensive those facilities can be as well.
Right.
If you think about it in terms of an investment, if you're spending, $4,000 a month on an assisted living facility and you're not building equity in your property and you're just, it's almost like you're just paying someone else. There can be some financial benefits to having it on your own property as well, while getting to maintain the independence and the lifestyle that you want to enjoy at the same time.
Right. So this slide is just looking of our current housing inventory. Only 3.5% of the units have homes that have, you know, a no step entry, right? 3.5%. And then it gets into more detail. So basically our housing stock isn't a great way to stay and age in place. One good trick is you can get one of those old yardsticks, and if you walk around your house and try to turn into the bathrooms or the hallways, and you are running into the walls, then your house isn't well suited to age in place. So I just want to walk you through a couple case studies. I find that instead of talking about theory, it's kind of interesting to look at how it's put into place to get you a little more excited about things. Now I just got to get this. All right, there we go. So this is a unit we did for a family. This one is just under 600 square feet. We did a lot of focus grouping with our clients, and most of them said that they wanted a separate living space. I'm going to show you a different model after this that's a bit different, but this woman was 83 when we started designing it. She wanted a big full kitchen. She wanted to be able to have the family come down from the main house to her house. She wanted her kind of washing area, bathroom, separate bedroom. And then this little section over here is kind of the site plan. So you have the main house up above, and then you can see how the little cottage tucks in. Now, there we go. So one thing to really consider when you're designing your ADU is kind of what's around you, how you live in the yard, and how, you know, you got to think about whether you're going to live in the cottage or you're going to live in the main house. But what I really invite clients to do is think about how this cottage can evolve with you through time, right? So maybe it's a renter now, and you want to think about how does the renter's outdoor space private from my outdoor space, and how is their entry designed and laid out so that they're not coming through my personal backyard space. And then I think it's a great exercise to just think through the various scenarios. Okay, what if I am going to live there? What pieces do I want to do? And then the other thing that you really need to look at is what is the site going to tell you? So you can kind of see up here behind the cottage was a monster 3-story, fairly unattractive apartment building. And so instead of flipping this design and putting it over here in the foreground, we actually tucked the ADU back against that apartment building. So she is never looking at that building. She's always in the cottage, looking out into the yard, looking across the other neighbors' fences, and it's feeling more expansive. It feels like she's not being watched and doesn't have to put curtains down. So it's really important to understand your site also. And then she really wanted to be able to sit out with her adult daughter in the main house in the sun in the mornings and have some coffee. So we also did some sun studies to look at how the sun was going to come after we added the cottage, and made sure that we chose a place that had the morning sun. So that's not for everybody. Sometimes people like a different priority, but think about how you want to use your space. And I really encourage people to design the space to work when both the big house and the cottage want to be out and together at the same time. When you have a space, when you all want to be together, the space will work, but you really have to be mindful of when you all want to be outside, but you want privacy. I think it's like the old adage, good fences make good neighbors. I mean, being thoughtful about how you lay these cottages out is super important. So one thing to just be, educate you guys about is that the American Disabilities Act, which is what currently takes care of our access and wheelchair friendly and the requirements for all that, doesn't apply to single family homes, and it doesn't apply to ADUs. And so we make it a priority to make things accessible because we think it's just better housing that's more usable for everybody. And it goes beyond the occupant of the house. So a lot of times when we're working with seniors, we're seeing that maybe they're in great health, but maybe they have a really good friend that's not and needs to, you know, access or visit them in a wheelchair. So you can see the design here of this cottage has a front door over here. Everything's at grade. There's no steps. And then her French doors open up to the patio. So everything is level, covered. And that makes it just accessible whether you're coming in with a stroller or whether you're coming in with a walker. So it's just better design.
We did a site consultation a few months ago with a homeowner who had recently had back surgery, and his adult daughter was living with him, helping him with some things. And he was walking around with a walker. And, you know, it was funny, just little things that you absolutely take for granted when you're just healthy and active and mobile. It's just so astonishing. Like, there was just one little step up, you know, from the outside of the house into the inside of the house. And the family, you could tell, had really struggled. They had kind of tried to form this ramp that was like kind of working for them. And then, you know, he went into the kitchen and there was a little threshold between the linoleum in the kitchen and the hardwood floors of the living room. And just that little half-inch, you know, threshold just caused him so much trouble with the walker. And you just start to kind of think about, gosh, if this is just one scenario, where are all the things that just being an active, healthy adult, you just completely take for granted?
Yes. Well, that's a good segue. As you can see, our cottage has floors that go throughout, and there's no change in material. So we're making sure there's no threshold differences. So we're certified age-in-place specialists as well as architects, but there's a lot of neat little things with that we got to learn about. For one, our eyes lose the ability to see the difference in planes. So if your countertop color and your flooring color are the same, that depth perception of what you can see in detail disappears. So just by choosing design materials where you have a contrasting counter and floor will help a great deal with what's going to be visible to the occupants. The other thing is great lighting. So this is that wall, this big blank wall behind here is the one tucked up against the apartment building. But you can see we have LED lights and then we have skylights in the ceiling. And honestly, every time I visited her, she doesn't have the lights on at all because of the way the space just really fills up with light. But there's nothing better for us as we age than natural light. It's the best thing for our eyes. LED is the next best thing, but really making sure that you design those features in. Okay, flipping.
And Carrie, you said that this unit is a little over 600 square feet?
Just under, it's 597.
Just under, yeah, wow, it just really feels spacious from the photos.
Thanks. We really tried to, this is kind of what I was talking about before, is think about what your views are, and instead of that big apartment building, see, she gets to look over all these fun backyards out the French doors. And then instead of staring at the main house, the majority of her openings are facing the courtyard. So she feels like she's not under a microscope with the main house and that she can keep the windows open and be connected to the outside. And then I also really invite you, I mean, everybody has their fun phrases like right sizing and everything like that. But the truth is, if you are going to move into this little house, and maybe it's not today, maybe it's for income now, and then it'll be for you down the road, but you really need to think about what's important to you stuff-wise, because you have to find a place for your stuff. It's just not realistic that we're all going to purge and not have anything. And it works, these spaces work so much better if you're just thoughtful about the design. So a lot of times in our units, we like to do a bench seat on two sides. Then you have the 3 chairs at the dining room table that could be moved if you need an accessible spot. But then you'll see here, we always put storage under the bench. Now, granted, the stuff in the middle isn't going to be as accessible, but we always do this nice little detail at the end of the bench. We even put an outlet inside there. So if you have a laptop, you can put it down in there and then pull it out on the table. So thinking through like what you really want to bring, what's important. The first thing we do with a lot of clients is, you know, are you bringing some piece? The client had a dresser from her mother, and she had a bookcase from her father. And so you need to get the dimensions of that, and maybe some pictures, and get it to your design team and figure out, like, if there are things important to you, where are you going to put them? You know, she also has a big photo wall, like, where are you going to do the photo wall? You know, it's unrealistic, I think, having been an architect for 20 years, to think that you're going to change how you live. It's about designing for how you want to live, and just kind of a new perspective on it. And then here's the bedroom, just looking again at being mindful of privacy. That big house is up above and outside, so instead of having lower windows on this wall, we have a window up front. You can think about how you can keep that open at night and have airflow, and you listen to the rain in the winter, but you're still safe and not on display. And again, the same floors going throughout to keep it safe, no trip hazards. But we really think just elegant, like nice design solutions. This is the bathroom for, you know, universal design. I'll just back up, and Caitlin mentioned it a little bit, and Fred mentioned it a little bit, but universal design is designing so that something is easy for everybody to use. It's equitable, it's flexible, it's as good for an 80-year-old as it is for an 8-year-old. And so that's like things like a low threshold where you could roll, you know, a grocery cart or a stroller or a walker over, and it's going to work well, and it's better designed for all those people. So we like to use these big drawers in our designs because it's much easier for us. When you open that drawer, you simply just tilt your head down, look for what you're looking for, instead of getting down on your knees and looking back into the cabinet to try to find that piece that you're looking for. It's much more ergonomic on how it works with our bodies. The shower here, you can do the zero threshold European style shower. We have a linear drain on the front and a linear drain on the back. So if you're worried about flooding, you've got a kind of a double system. And then it's always great just to put the shower head on a sliding bar. This is amazing if you want to wash your dog, or if you wind up wanting to sit down on a bench to take a shower, and then it also just stays up and can be used as a normal shower. But it's about that flexibility of use and getting more out of, you know, simple moves. So I just wanted to look at this with one of our clients who, sorry, technology is great. I can't get this. There we go. We had it was an aging parent. I know it's a terrible name. Nobody can figure out what to call everybody as they get older. You don't want to be a senior and you don't want to be a boomer, but here we are. Aging parent owns a house outright in California. It's been paid off. They get a home equity line of credit to build an age-in-place in-law. They move into the in-law and rent the main house. Now, if their house is valued at $1 million, the home equity line, and I did this slide like last year, and our interest rates are so much lower than 5.89 now. But if you're borrowing $350,000 over 20 years at 5.89, you're paying back $2,400, let's say $2,500 a month. But then you can rent the main house for $6,000, and you're cash flow positive for $3,515. So not only do you have a new environment that is going to let you age in place, our bodies also don't have the ability to deal with toxins as we age, and most people have older houses that need a lot of maintenance. So you've got a low maintenance, healthy indoor air quality, and you have an income, and you've held on to your Prop 13 taxes. So it's just such a great model for how we can empower aging in our community. So I just wanted to walk you through one that's kind of a different scenario. This is a client who, this square or rectangle on the left was an existing one-car garage. You can see over on the right, this is kind of the one-car garage. And then we were able to pop up a new piece to get them some extra space. And their lot was really like a postage stamp. I think the whole lot was 3,000 square feet. So you can build these ADUs on a pretty small lot. They didn't want to take up the whole yard, so it was an exercise in being really mindful of how we can design the space. the occupant in the main house was in a wheelchair, and her friend who built this unit in the back wanted to make sure that it was totally accessible. So you can see we've actually given over a fair amount of space in the unit to get this nice big European style bathroom to make sure it was accessible. But that was really important to the clients. So this is just finished, so we don't have the landscaping in yet, but use your imagination. But again, we have a nice accessible walkway so people can come in and visit. One great thing for design, I'm sure you've seen in some of the hotels these days, you get like the peephole up high and the peephole down below, because they're trying to make sure that if you're in a wheelchair, you can still see who's coming, and if you're, if you're tall, you can still see too. But one thing we like to do is to do the glass door, because then you've got the visibility. Most of these backyard cottages are in the backyard and they're behind a secured entry point, so it's not a visibility or vulnerability point, but it does give you that visibility when you approach. So really designing with light, I mean, I think how we can fill these spaces and kind of carve different ways to have interesting perspectives. We have this little narrow window here because this side faces the bigger house. And again, we were concerned about privacy. So we wanted to put the French doors out towards the yard, kind of turning away from the house. But we did definitely want to get light from a number of different directions. This is, again, a zero threshold. Here we've just done a stained concrete floor to keep things simple with a radiant heat system inside. And then this big guy, these guys, because this unit I think is a little less than 280 square feet, it has a lot more kind of built-in flexibility and uses. So that Murphy bed folds down to be the bed. Obviously, a Murphy bed is a bed. But we've got the great built-in lighting, the bookcase behind. She's got this piece where she can also enjoy looking out into the yard and looking at her fun sliver window and kind of getting a sense of what's happening. And then I think it's really, again, designing for flexibility. So we did a built-in desk here with just a standard office chair, but also if you were in a wheelchair, the chair can be removed, and this could be something that you can roll up and roll under without having to modify. And again, one of our clients in this scenario is in a wheelchair. So how do you make things easily usable by multiple people? And then also, they definitely wanted a computer space, a space to work, and so making it feel like a different part of the cottage. It has its own window looking at a different direction to feel a bit different, and then building in kind of multi-purpose, multi-use pieces. Now, there's lots of fun gadgets we can get into as we're aging, and I'm not going to show you a ton of them, but this is just, and our client didn't want to model this, so this is the contractor's assistant. But this is a way where if you can't reach up high, you can do these clever closet systems where you then pull down using that lead. You can reach everything without overextending. Our client had kind of a really limited reach of what she could get with her shoulder. So this is a way that we can kind of get more space, use the height, but make it accessible. And then getting into the kitchen. So again, we've got a contrasting countertop with the floor so that we can help our eyes. We've got kind of popping up to get light from multiple directions. That's going to make the quality of the space nicer. We have a seamless transition. There's no thresholds anywhere in the cottage, so everything is accessible. Microwave is down low. It's a drawer that comes out. So again, you're reaching down to grab it. There's space to approach the sink. Using like really smart kind of European designed refrigerators, you can really maximize a great space without adding too much. And then just being thoughtful about the design. We've got extra pull-out breadboards on both sides so that you get additional counter space, more flexibility of use. And then again, we've done these pull-down cabinets that are up above, so she can take advantage of that height, but they're easy to use. They're adjusted. You can see the stuff on the bottom shelf all stays in place. It's not interrupted, but then you get a bunch more levels of storage without needing to pull out that ladder and then get unstable and unsafe. Oops, not again. And then here we did a complete European style wet room. So the whole bottom floor is waterproof. We have a linear drain along the back. But one thing this does from a design perspective, it just makes the space feel bigger, makes the bathroom feel like it's a larger, more luxurious room. We got to repeat that sun window. Again, here they didn't want to do a slide bar for the shower head, but it can go up high here, and then there's another clip down here where it can go as well. I love wall-mounted toilets. They're great and easy to clean under. You don't ever have that gross kind of goo around the base of the toilet. And then again, a really modern, contemporary sink, but something that you can roll under, you can access whoever you are, but we're hoping it just looks like it's a great design element and not something special. But just looking again at the zero threshold into the bathroom, pocket doors are an amazing aging in place feature because a lot of when we lose our balance is when a door swings and our center of gravity goes forward with the swinging door. But if you're standing strong and stable and you can slide the door into the pocket and then just transition to the room, you know, that really makes for a lot of better sense design-wise and safety. And, you know, it's funny, I hear myself talking about that and I can feel some of you being like, oh no, we're not really aging. But, you know, the truth is people used to live to 50 and so they didn't have arthritis and you didn't have to think about putting in a lever doorknob because you didn't have arthritis because you didn't live that long. But the great news is we're living longer. Science is helping us stay healthier, but we're all going to have issues. Like for me, I had spinal issues when I was from 20 to 30. Luckily, it was just that decade and I don't have to deal with it anymore, but we all have our moments, whether they're temporary or permanent. And I just hope that this can help you imagine a space that can not only support your independence, but, you know, get you excited about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carrie, so much. And yes, there's all of Carrie's contact information. And then I'm just going to share my screen one final time, and then we'll do some questions if anyone has questions for us. So what are your next steps? Carrie, you guys have kind of listened to the presentation. You know, you've been following along with articles that we put out at Maxable. And so you're thinking, okay, I'm sold. I'm interested in an ADU, or I want to explore an ADU. What do I do now? So one of the things is we can certainly help you. We've literally conducted hundreds of site consultations across the state with homeowners that are exactly in your position. And so we can do a site consultation. And what does that include? It's a paid service that we offer where we conduct research for you ahead of your visit. We come out to your house, we walk you through everything. We sit down at your home and we kind of go over like regulations and ordinance and things like that. We can help connect you to amazing architects like Carrie. And we can cover any number of topics. You know, we can cover things like, you know, aging in place and ADA compliance type related issues. We can talk about permit and regulation questions, go over cost estimates, you know, talk about different methods of construction. These consultations can really be tailored to your questions and your needs. So if that's something you guys are interested in, I would encourage you to explore that option. One other thing I'm really, really excited about, we are about to announce our second annual Granny Flat 101 event and expo. So last year we had over 200 people attend this event with us, and we sold out our tickets a month ahead of time. And so for the next it says 24 hours, but actually really it's 48 hours. If you use the code ADU webinar, you guys can get $10 off those tickets. It is located in San Diego, so this is really kind of geared more for Southern California people. But this will be the largest ADU event held in Southern California this year. So we have a super awesome lineup of panelists and information on that. So if you guys are in Southern California, either LA or San Diego or Orange County, I would really encourage you guys to take a look at that. And we'll send an email out that has information on that event. Finally, I do want to mention this. This is for anyone in the state of California. Loan Depot has let us know that anyone who finances with them can get their site visit from us refunded. So they'll pay you back your $250 for your ADU consultation that we charge. So again, that's kind of a cool feature. So it's worth kind of reaching out if you are considering about financing and you don't have the money to just finance it out of your pocket. And also interest rates are really low right now. So it actually is a great time to borrow money. So at any rate, Meredith's info is here on the screen. So if you guys are interested in exploring that with her, you know, I would say it's worth reaching out and, you know, checking out their rates and seeing what they can do for you. And now we have time for some Q&A. So if anyone has questions, especially about kind of aging in place or design questions, we would love to answer those now. Okay.
Caitlin, it's Meredith at Loan Depot. One of the top questions people coming in is, what are the new regulations and costs related with ADUs? We've been hearing different things, and I know every location is different, but what in general are you seeing?
Yeah, so I would say the cost is going to vary dramatically depending on both what region of California you're in and what method of construction you choose. And then also how large you build. So remember that accessory dwelling units, you know, I actually was just talking to a client today who was like, wow, I'm so shocked that these cost so much. And he goes, you know, it's just a simple project. But the reality is, and I see Carrie kind of smiling over there, the reality is even small units, even garage conversions, they seem like simple projects, but the reality is they have all of the complexity of a regular house packed into this tiny little project. And so in a lot of ways, it can actually be more difficult than designing a home because you're not working with a blank slate and you have to conform to existing site constraints and you already have a main house. And like, think about everything what like Carrie was saying, you know, how does the flow of people work between the main house? How do you maintain privacy? You know, how do you show off the best views? All these kind of things. So my general thing on cost is that Southern California is going to be a lot less expensive than Northern California, generally, and that the larger you build your ADU, the cheaper your cost per square foot will end up being. So again, there's a lot of fixed costs associated with ADUs. Your first 400 square feet are going to be your most expensive. So your kitchen and your bathroom are going to be the most expensive square footage. And then you can't amortize the cost of that over having, you know, 3 or 4 bedrooms like some of our main houses do. So as a general rule of thumb, I know I'm being like intentionally ambiguous here, and it's because there's just so many variables at play, it's difficult to say. But we do have a lot of case study examples on the site that you can get an idea, or you can reach out to us for a phone call and we're happy to kind of walk you through what we think ballpark a project like yours would start at.
What are the lowest and highest costs that you see out there?
So I would say that in Southern California, garage conversions start at around $90,000, and a standalone unit starts at about $150,000, and that would be kind of San Diego, Orange County, LA. I would say that in Bay Area, and Carrie, you can keep me honest on this, I would say that in Bay Area, garage conversions are starting more at like the $130,000, $150,000 range, and standalone units are starting more at like the $250,000 range.
That's right.
Yeah. And then you also asked about the regulations. So the regulations depend on every jurisdiction. So every jurisdiction is going to have their own regulations. There's over 540 jurisdictions in California, so it can get really granular really fast. I would say that if you're curious about what the regulations are for ADUs, we have the ADU regulations portal on our website where we've tried to break out what the regulations are for any given, well, we don't have all the cities of California mapped out, but we have a lot of cities in both Bay Area, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And then I think also just, you know, being on newsletter lists of, you know, like Inspired Independence puts out a newsletter. You know, the AARP puts out a really great newsletter. Maxable has a newsletter where we update you guys on regulations and things that are happening. Those are great places to kind of stay up to date on what's happening because things are very much still in flux.
Right. There's several state bills that are on the floor right now. There's two, right, that look really promising, and then, you know, we have to see when are those going to go to the governor's desk and when are those going to roll into actually affecting you. One thing to note that's coming up is as of January 1st, 2020, all new ADUs will require a solar panel, and there's a new net zero building code requirement for energy code. And so those are good things to do, great for the environment. They can have a cost implication. There's also the unfortunate thing that when a new code goes into effect, we don't exactly know how each city is going to interpret it. So there can be a little bit of inefficiency at the beginning of the year when these new pieces come in. So if you get your permits just in and they accept your package as complete in 2019, you'll be under the 2019 codes. But if you don't submit any permits until 2020, you're going to be in the new codes, which again is solar and a kind of a net energy piece of it too.
Yeah, you don't have to have received your permits this year, but you do need to submit for your permits this year. And I would say that we're getting really close to that deadline approaching, because if you think about it, it takes you a little bit of time to kind of decide who you're going to hire, and then the design process can take, I mean, what's the average design process, Carrie, that you spend with a client before they feel ready to submit?
Well, we try to do a couple things. We have pre-designed plans. So if you like a plan we've already done, we can get you going in, 4 weeks. But if you want to kind of modify that plan to work with your yard, or you want to do more of a traditional plan, that's, 3 to 6 months, depending on your decision-making process.
Right.
Yeah.
So on the long side, 3 to 6 months, we're close to, if not out of the window. But I think the important thing is that there's still some time to avoid having to put solar on, but really you would need to act quickly, essentially, to avoid having to do that.
Another question, do you have contractors that can help people, whether it's being stick-built or prefab or mobile home?
Yes, absolutely. We have, I think one of the things we've really tried to do is develop a network of really talented people that are ADU experts. And so, for example, working with firms like Inspired Independence and Carrie, we have really skilled architects we can recommend and that we've worked with on projects in San Diego, in Los Angeles, in the Bay Area, as well as general contractors, both with traditional stick build and prefab options as well.
Christine has a great question. What do you think of 2-story garage conversions or maybe a unit with a lot? How do those cost and how do they function?
So a 2-story garage, a lot of people want to build above a garage. There's a number of things to take into account. First of all, the age of your garage. Most garages were not built to withstand the load of a second story. So there can be a lot of structural engineering work that would need to go into making your garage safe and code compliant to be able to build a second floor. The other thing is that a lot of times above your garage has setback requirements that your current garage wouldn't have to conform to. So one of the amazing things about garages is that you can convert them regardless of what the setback requirements are. It's kind of like, think about it being kind of grandfathered in on your lot. So you can convert any existing permitted accessory structure into an accessory dwelling unit, which most often plays out as a garage. But when you start to add new construction or build above a garage, for example, then you do have to comply with those setback regulations. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Additionally, building up is significantly more expensive than building out. So keeping your unit 1 story will make it a lot less expensive than having to build up on 2 stories. Here's another thing Carrie could chime in on. I would say that generally to have a loft, like if you want to do some kind of sleeping loft, you need at least 17 feet in height to be able to do it well. I don't know, Carrie, what your thought on that, if 17 feet gives you enough space.
You know, right now, a lot of the cities are keeping the height low enough that it's really hard to get that actual legitimate second level. So it's more the loft where you have a hard time making your bed and hit your head in the middle of the night kind of loft. And I think the other thing with the building over the garage is you do eat up a lot of square footage getting a new staircase up to the new unit up above. And then you're also creating a unit that has to be, accessed by stairs. So it just doesn't have as much flexibility in terms of who can live there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, not building above the garage is not the aging in place option we've been
That's a different webinar. Yeah, different webinar.
Great. Well, we're almost out of time, so let's just do maybe 1 or 2 more questions, Meredith, if there was one last question that you thought was really good, and then also we'll make this recording available as well to anyone who couldn't join for the whole thing or missed out on some of it.
Well, I hate to say this, but a question people had asked before is, particularly after such big numbers, is how do I finance this?
Great question. Meredith, I think you're the perfect person to answer that for us.
I hate to say that, there's a huge variety of options, fortunately, these days. HELOC, Carrie, you mentioned, which is a great option. But we've seen some fantastic low rates that either you can use your equity in your home, but we also have things called renovation loans. We are just quoting one today, actually, at a 4% interest rate. It's a mortgage plus construction costs. And in San Diego County, for example, rents are going at $1,875, and it just makes a lot of financial sense. It makes a lot of financial sense to have in-home caregivers or family members take care of it. So if you're looking at like a $70,000 or $80,000 project, you're probably looking ultimately at about $400 per month. If you're looking at a $150,000 project, a detached granny flat, we're typically looking at like $700 per month. So it makes a lot of financial sense for everyone.
Yeah, so let's just touch on that for a second, Meredith, because I think the numbers people can get a little bit of sticker shock or just kind of feel like, oh my gosh, these projects are so expensive. But if you think about it, what Meredith is saying is that if you were to finance 100% of your project, and your project was going to cost $150,000, so this would be kind of maybe a Southern California standalone unit or a garage conversion up in the Bay, your monthly payments on that project would be $700 a month. But in somewhere like San Diego, you might be able to rent that unit for, $1,500 a month. In the Bay Area, you might be able to rent that unit for $2,500 a month or more, depending on what neighborhood you're in. So, I think the important thing to think about is, yes, these are expensive projects, but one, you're adding equity and value to your house. And also, especially if you're looking at this as, a potential rental opportunity, one, you can definitely cash flow positive on that. But two, you're also being smart and kind of making these plans for down the road. We talked about those aging in place opportunities. So I think another thing we encourage our clients to think about is, what are my current goals and what are my long-term goals? And so ADUs are really flexible spaces in that sense as well.
Oh, it's definitely our job to run the numbers and make sure it makes sense for everybody.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys. I want to be respectful of your time, so I think we're going to wrap up now, but I want to just a special shout out to Fred and Carrie for joining us. We really, really appreciate you guys giving your evening to helping educate all of us on this topic. And thanks for everyone for joining us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Okay, everyone, have a good night.